The Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast is brought to you by the following sponsors: EliteForm.com, IgnitionAPG.com, PlayUSA at PLAEUSA.com, and Sorinex Exercise Equipment at Sorinex.com. And now, the Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast. Welcome to Iron Game Chalk Talk with your host, Ron McKeefery.
Every time our athletes walk into this weight room, they're going to be pushed to the max.
Let's go! Everything you got!
On this podcast, hear Coach McKeefery straight talk about training, featuring the top strength and conditioning professionals from around the world. And now, here's your host, Ron McKeefery.
Hey guys, welcome back to Iron Game Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Ron McKeefery, and this is episode number 121. Iron Game Chalk Talk is a weekly podcast where I bring you experts in the field to talk shop. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to us on iTunes or YouTube, or join the mailing list at ronmckeefery.com to stay up to date with the latest guests and anything else that I have going on. This week, excited to have Mick Stierli with us. Mick is a sergeant with the New South Wales Police Force in Sydney, Australia. He's also a strength coach for the Canterbury, Bankstown Bulldogs of the National Rugby League. And guy that I met at the NSCA conference, followed for years, puts out tons of great information, is leading the way when it comes to tactical strength and conditioning. And so wanted to get him on the show. Spent about a year being able to pull this off because of security clearances and things along those lines. But just a top-notch strength coach, and there's a ton of information in this about how he created a program there with the police force. How he sets up his programs for rugby. Very, very eclectic guy, and just some really great stuff. So I know you're going to enjoy this episode. Before we do, though, we want to make sure we recognize all of our sponsors. We have EliteForm.com, PlayUSA.com, IgnitionAPG.com, and of course Sorinex. And we always talk about Sorinex and just what kind of people they are. We recently purchased some sissy squat bars for the weight room here, and just fantastic product as always. And what's great about it, and dealing with lots of different vendors, lots of different companies through the years. When you can get some equipment from people that train themselves, B, are just quality individuals, and then C, obviously the equipment itself is fantastic. It's a win-win-win. So recommend you checking out Sorinex if you haven't already done so. Make sure you follow them on their social media, and just let them know at any opportunity that you can how much you appreciate them being a part of the show. They've come back on. They're going to be a sponsor again for 2016, and just can't say enough about being involved with being a part of the Bosco tribe. So appreciate them. Lastly, the book's doing fantastic. So many of you guys have reached out through social media, email, the whole deal, and told me such great things about the book. And when you write things like this, you never know how it's going to do. And I'm just blown away by the feedback, and appreciate you guys so much for supporting this project, and just a passion project of mine. Always wanted to write a book. Took me being displaced from my my place and stuck in a hotel for 5 months to get it done, but pulled it off. But appreciate everybody that's gone on to Amazon and left a review. Daniel, strength coach at Texas basketball. Dave's the head strength coach at Colorado. Rachel's a strength coach, minor league coordinator with the St. Louis Cardinals. Christian's a former intern there. He's the head strength coach at Stockton College. Just on and on and on, and truly appreciate everybody that's gone on and left a review, and 5 stars, nothing but 5 stars throughout. And so really appreciate that. Also, Eric down at Liberty now, they just picked up the book as part of their staff read. And if you are interested in getting the book as a staff read and buying multiple copies like this, let me know and I should be able to get the book to you for a little bit cheaper. I mean, it goes through Amazon the way the whole thing's set up, but I should be able to do that a little bit cheaper than going on through Amazon. So reach out to me through email, through the website, and I'll do my best to get you as good of a deal as I possibly can. This really is not a money making project for me, although there will be a little bit of profits, but really just something that I've always wanted to do, and as long as I was able to get my money back that I put into it, it's totally worth it to me. Just want to put information out there and continue to give back to the profession. So this was a way that I could do that. And I'm just glad that it's helping people out in the process. So, want to get to the episode. Sit back and enjoy, and we'll see you on the other side. All right, guys, welcome back to Iron Game Chalk Talk. This is take 2 and about a year in the making with this guy. But I am so excited to have Mick Stierli with us. Mick is a strength coach, a tactical strength coach, police officer in Australia, and works with rugby league, or rugby league or rugby union. Rugby league. I get them confused. But just a great guy. Met him at the last NSCA conference a year ago, and we've been trying to get him on the show ever since. And read his work from afar, and just a big fan. So, man, I appreciate you coming on the show, bud.
No problems. Thanks for taking the time and the effort. We've had a few false starts, but we've got there in the end.
Absolutely. That's all right, though. Good that comes with those away, right?
Exactly.
Mick, let's go into your background a little bit. I mean, you got a little bit different journey. You started in working in as a police officer first, and then you kind of got your way into strength conditioning. It's always been a piece of you, but let's talk about why you got into it and kind of how you've led to your current role.
Okay. Well, basically, I was like everybody else. Always loved sport at school, and was an athlete and did all that sort of stuff. Prior to joining the police officer, joining the police force, I was a coach, working in gyms and doing personal training and all that sort of stuff. The actual catalyst for me to join the New South Wales Police was I had an officer that used to come in every day, and every morning this guy used to get in my ear and say, "Mate, you should join the police force. You'd be a great cop." At that time, I was playing rugby league, and I think he was trying to actually recruit me for the police rugby league team, which is a big part of why he tried to push me in. It got to the stage where I thought, you know what, I'm going to shut this guy up. I'm going to send the forms off and put it in for the police force. I mean, always had that sort of dream that be a police officer. As a kid growing up, you're either a police officer or you want to be a firefighter when you grow up.
Absolutely.
Everyone knows that police officers were created so that firefighters could have heroes. So I went down the police officer line. That's what fits in the fire department. Happened one night, got a call saying you've been accepted. Congratulations, you got to go down to the police academy. You start, on this date. Went down. I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship based on my university degree in exercise science. Went down there, completed the academy training, went out, got a posting in a sort of southwest area of Sydney, which is generally a pretty rough sort of area. Absolutely loved working as a police officer. I did the frontline police stuff, moved into more of the proactive unit where we sort of did a lot of plainclothes work, drug detection, gang sort of stuff. Love that. Part of me wanted to give back sort of thing, I guess. I wanted to get on the training side of things, so I actually become a weapons and defensive tactics instructor. As part of that education sort of a protocol and that education command that I was a part of or sort of semi-attached to, they sort of knew my background and they sort of asked me, look, we're looking at reviewing our fitness training and our training protocols for our fitness instructors. Would you like to be a part of a review process? I said, well, sounds all right. What's involved and how do I get on it? And I said, basically they're just going to come up with some ideas. They'll flick it to you. You provide some feedback, and then they'll run with any decisions or any sort of advice that you can sort of come up with. So yeah, beautiful, no problem. Sounds interesting to me. Do I need to do anything? My commander sort of tapped me on the shoulder and says, no, you'll be fine. By the way, you start on Monday. I said, okay, well, who else is involved? Who else do I need to report to anyone? He goes, oh no, you start on Monday, it's just you. And that was supposed to be like a six-week type of a review of what we were doing and how we did it. And that's turned into, I think I've been doing this role for somewhere about 12 to 13 years now, so I actually haven't been back to my old role. I'm still a police officer. I can get called to go on the street at any time, and I do fill in sometimes around the holidays, the Christmas periods, New Year's Eve, all that sort of stuff. But most of my stuff is more of the, the health and fitness direction and programming and sort of initiatives that we roll out here from our unit in the middle of Sydney.
Oh, that's awesome. It gives you a unique perspective, and with that unique perspective, and I know one of the things I respect the most about you is that, how much you've been putting information out there and trying to make it better for everybody, and the amount of speaking that you do and all that. But let's dive into the tactical side of things a little bit. I mean, what do you see that's being done that maybe you think should be done a different way?
Well, you're exactly right. I think when we first started this, there was actually nothing for that tactical side of things. I mean, being a strength and conditioning coach, if you wanted to look up power production or how to train a volleyball player or an NFL player or a baseball player, you can go and find the research. You can go and look for that sort of stuff. We sort of identified that there's just nothing out there. So part of what we do is we want to share what we do here, and we do some stuff here that I think is pretty outstanding for a law enforcement agency, which we want to share that sort of thing. So we're pretty big on the research and providing information to what we do. If other agencies contact us, we're always happy to say, yeah, look, no problems. Here's what we do. This is what works for us. You might be able to take good bits out of it. You may be able to find stuff that doesn't work for you, but we'll share that with you. We're not going to hide what we're doing. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. If we've done it already, we'll give it to you. All right.
Awesome.
With regards to sort of what doesn't go too well, I probably think you got to think of the people that you deal with. Is generally they're sort of like they're confident, they want to get things done, so they sort of have an issue where they don't like to trust the process. They sort of want to jump straight to the cool and the sexy stuff, as opposed to not spending time on developing the basic fundamentals that they need to go through. I mean, you come to our police academy, we're pretty good. We can have a wide range of people that come to our police academy, anywhere from 18 up until I think our oldest recruit was about 59, a grandmother that always just wanted to be a police officer, life got in the way, and eventually just had her chance to do what she wanted to do. So we have it's basically competency based, so you need to earn the right to progress. It could be 8 weeks before you pick up a bar, but we have competency change, competency streams that you need to be competent in each one of these activities or movements or sort of patterns before we actually say, okay, now we're going to load you up and give you a bar. Mm-hmm. Right, so we're trying to make sure that we want to increase their resilience over the term of their lifetime, not just for the time we've got them at the academy.
Sure.
That's sort of our breeding ground. We can sort of get them and educate them into what they need to do, ways to look after themselves once they get onto the street and deal with stress, things like that. That's our time that we can actually mould that police officer before we send them out, because that's when we actually get them day to day. Once they get in the field, it gets a little bit tougher to do that sort of stuff. Probably the other thing too is, and it's probably more of an indictment on general population, is that we don't hip hinge well. And you probably find most people that have back pains, have issues, they probably can't hip hinge. Mm. So we want to teach that sort of stuff, which is not all that sexy. If you're telling someone, push your butt back to the wall, do that 10 times. But what about a weight? No, you need to get this right first.
Right.
That's sort of stuff that we need to do. Generally, police officers are weak unilaterally, so we try and do a lot of unilateral training with them to get them up to speed with that. Product of that is they're unable to stabilise their pelvis. Now, if you're going to wear a firearm for 12 hours a day and all the appointments belts that go on that, you want to make sure that you're strong around that midsection so that you can carry that load. The usually limited hip and thoracic mobility is another problem that we'll have to work on. Probably one of the biggest things, and one of the things we sort of identified, is they've got poor force absorption capabilities. It's all good to be able to take off and run fast, but we need to know how to stop. Mm-hmm. And the proper mechanics for stopping is something I think is probably not mistreated, but sort of the lack of time spent on that can be a problem in the tactical environment. I mean, not a lot of our coppers get into jumping up to something or stepping up to something. When they drop down or they have to step down from something, can be a problem. If you have a valgus knee collapse, that's dangerous enough just with body weight. Right. But if you put load on top of that, well, then that's a whole different kettle of fish we need to deal with that. Right. So that's probably one of the biggest ones, is that we love doing the cool and sexy stuff, but we sort of neglect the basic stuff that works. And spending the time to do the stuff that may not look as good as doing Olympic lifts and nice cleans and perfect snatches and all that sort of stuff. Well, let's get the basics right first. Let's fix that, and then we can go from there.
Now, I would imagine that it's probably easy or easier anyways when they're in the academy setting, when they're younger and they're going through and they're being forced, and it's kind of the military type boot camp type deal. But as you mentioned, I mean, you have officers that are 20 years old, but you have officers that are 40 years old. How are you maintaining getting information out to those that are already in the field that, now it's just, it's that annual fitness exam, or whatever? How are you going about getting that information out to them and also meeting them where they are in their development? Some of them have been former athletes. Some of them are, like you said, haven't, they've never ran in a diagonal line in their life.
Correct. Some have never lifted anything heavier than their iPhone too, which is always a problem starting point. But what we've done with the New South Wales Police Force is we identified that. I mean, we're a pretty big police department. We've got 19,000 officers. Mm-hmm. We're a state-based organisation where we're the equivalent size of Texas. We provide air, land and sea law enforcement. We've got 8 regional areas and something like 50 police stations. So we're across the broad area. So the way we sort of targeted that was obviously impossible for me to keep an eye on 19,000 police officers. So we developed a police PTI, or physical training instructors certification for us. It's probably, to do the whole program, it takes about probably 6 months. And the way that works is we send them 3 months worth of prior learning, so stuff that they can build their underpinning knowledge on. So that when they come down, we get them for 2 weeks. Because obviously, taking a police officer offline for a training program is a big deal. Right. That's not what their role is. Their role is to, enforce the law, protect the public.
Right.
So they'll do a lot of work leading up to that with regards to that knowledge, the background sort of exercise science stuff. They come to our police academy, we get them for 2 weeks. And basically, from day one, they hit the ground running with revision and practical stuff. So day 2, we actually pick a group and they need to run a session for the class. Now, we don't expect that session or that coaching topic or whatever we give them to do to be perfect, but we want them to learn from that and put them in a position where they're going to experience, well, this is what's going to happen to me on, trying to write a program, or here's where I need to understand how to organise a room, how to organise and control moving people from one station to another or from one exercise to another. Towards the end, we break them up. We put them through an exam. We get an external assessor to come in, so it's not just a tick in the box. You need to be on song. And once you finish our program, you actually get a national accreditation, which means you can get secondary employment in a gym, or you can actually continue on with further education on that. But our final exam is a practical sort of one. We get them in a room, and because we spent time teaching them that the coaching cues that we want, the methodology that we want, that everyone is on the same page, and that's what they're going to get assessed on. Yeah. It's all ticked in the box. They come along. When they finish that course and they leave our 2-week program, they go out back to their police stations, and we give them an assignment as you need to train 10 officers. You need to put these 10 officers through a 6 to 8 week training program. You need to provide, starting results, end results, all the progressions that they've done, and do it. So that way we're also getting them to put back into their commands of what they've learned, providing all that sort of stuff. And it could be simple as weight loss. I've got someone that's qualified for a specialist unit, anything like that. It's a way of us getting something back and having that resource in the command. That's right. We also have people that sort of drop out of those sorts of things. That's not a problem for us, but it'll actually be a learning curve for that PTI is to, well, why did they drop out? Was it something that you did? Was it something in their life that they wasn't happening? Get them to understand that it's not just going to be all roses and perfect days when you write programs for people, especially in law enforcement with shift work and outside influences. It doesn't always work perfectly.
Is there a requirement for the officers to have some sort of physical training per week, per day, is it like the military where you have to get up and you have to do your PT before you go on, or is it something where it's simply you have to pass your annual exam?
It depends. If you're a part of a specialist unit, so our specialist squad, so if you're talking about our dog squad, our tactical units, our riot squad, yes, some of those guys do get access to training on duty. Generally in the field, it's probably going to be more of before or after work, because again, the police officer's role is to be a police officer. Right. It's not to actually go and train all the time. With regards to annual physical tests, If you're part of a specialist unit, yes, there is a fitness requirement. General duties and front line, at this stage, we don't have a fitness standard, but we do have more of a holistic approach into that, whereas we have people go out and try to provide them information. The beauty of having PTIs in the field, so we've got about 300 across the state. So that means pretty much every police station that you walk into, or every region that you go into, there is going to be a police officer that is a qualified physical training instructor. So they become a resource for us. We can send out information. So what we're currently doing, we've got a human resources, which is the command that I work under. Have a thing, it's live, work, well. That's the sort of motto. So we'll send out qualified nurses. Now our nurses will go out when they ring up and they say, we're going to turn up at Parramatta Police Station, for example. They will contact the local physical training instructor and they will pair up. The nurse will sit down with them and they'll do blood pressure, glucose. They'll talk about diet. They'll actually explain and talk about other initiatives that the health and fitness unit are doing. So they'll take care of the sort of the medical side of that officer. Then they will get passed on to the PTI, who'll put them through the movement screen and take care of more of that physical side and more of that identifying, hey, you've got a risk of a musculoskeletal injury here. Let's fix it. And at the same time, they'll also have, our psychologists have done a great job of developing a little thing called, it's a 5 things booklet, which is just sort of common things, 5 things they can use to identify, deal with lack of sleep, stress, poor health, poor eating choices, just things that they can come to more understand and become more resilient using mindfulness, those sorts of things, just simple things that they can tick off. So it becomes a holistic approach into making sure that we're looking after the officer's welfare.
Sure.
We are looking at eventually, and it's always a tricky one, fitness standards, because obviously it always needs to be what's the minimum requirement needed to do your job. And you might have, for example, someone who is the greatest computer crimes detective ever. Well, her job is not really a physical demand on that, but yeah, there's a health thing. If they are healthy and active, it's going to reduce their stress level. But then to do her job, they don't need to be physically active. So how do you find that end point? We have done, as part of our unit, as part of that research sort of stuff that you mentioned before, of physiological demands. It's been done by Ben Hinton from our unit. And look, it's the first time it's been done to our knowledge, where basically we put equivital monitoring units on our police officers. We put them on about 120 officers. They wore them for over 350 shifts. And the equivital monitoring units took into account heart rate, breathing rate, HRV, skin temp, accelerometry. They also put them synced in with a polar foot pod, so we had steps and distance travelled. What we did was we also linked that into our computer-aided dispatch. So we actually had the police officers wore them for the 12-hour shifts. We put our computer-aided dispatch straight over the top, and then whenever they called on or off at a job, we could actually say the time, the length, what they spent at those jobs, and then look at the physiological costs of that. So that, at this stage, that will influence later on down the track, especially how we train our officers when we do scenario-based training. I mean, we had guys who would attend a job that wasn't physical, but the stress levels were through the roof and their heart rate's at 95%.
Right.
And they just basically stand there trying to sort out an argument, such as a domestic violence incident or something like that. So when we're going to apply that sort of in a training scenario, it's no good sending in an officer who's relaxed and haven't done anything, just heart rate, breathing normal. No, we need to sort of look at, okay, how's that going to influence our training environment? We need to sort of make sure that we're training them to deal with what they're going to have to on the streets.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're still going through that. I mean, Ben's got about 35 gig of data to go through on that, so it's a lot of work on that, but that's sort of where we're headed with that sort of research and developing, more from the training protocol. How can we provide the best training to officers to prepare them for what happens when they go on the street?
Absolutely. Well, I think, one of the things that, obviously you being one of the first and 13 years ago, it looks a lot different than it does now for sure. But even still, there's several units and police forces around the country and around the world that still don't have anything, There's a lot of people that are listening that have an affinity for trying to help people and that use their knowledge base to help their communities through, firefighters or police officers or EMTs or first responders or whatever. how would you recommend, kind of a two-part question, how would you recommend people get something going? I mean, you kind of had an inside track in that you were a police officer. If you're on the outside, how would you get something going? And then, you mentioned polar, foot pods and HRVs, and that's taken some resources. I mean, I'm sure you had to fight some battles internally to get some funds to be able to get some equipment so that you could even conduct some of this testing. How would you go about, getting in, and then how do you go about getting more resources?
Okay. Getting in, you probably have to look at it from the point of view is that you may have to volunteer, I'm guessing. Mm-hmm. I mean, especially in Australia, we have very large police forces, so it's probably a little bit even harder. From my dealings with police officers in America, generally they're sort of city-based or region-based. It's probably more of just approaching someone and say, hey, look, I can provide this outside of what you currently do, and get some officers to come that way. It's always a tough one. Coming from where I am and the way that we set up stuff here, I think it might be an idea, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of colleges have interns, like yourself have interns. It might be an option to sort of say, well, to get that sort of experience, why don't you go down and speak to the local police force and say, hey, look, we want to give this guy some help. He wants more experience. Can we come in and we'll share this activity, or we'll let you use our equipment, or something like that? Probably the way to do it. A lot of it is based around injuries and saving injuries and saving costs associated with injuries is where you want to sort of look at targeting that. That's always a tough one, how to get in. Like I said, we're currently in the process. We just hired 2 new full-time staff and looking for a couple more in the next couple of months. So, we'll chase that up from our end. Mm-hmm. But with regards to, getting money and funding, for us, it has been, again, it is a long process. We need to constantly prove ourselves that, the most dangerous, words in the English language is we've always done it that way, why change?
That's right.
So, we sort of talk about the stuff we want to do with our training programs and say, when we went through the academy, we just run 20 Ks a day. Why don't you do that?
Right.
Well, okay. When you went through 20 years ago, did you have the same firearm? Did you have the same technology? Do we have the same tactics? Well, no, but things have changed. We need to use what's happening, and the exercise science, the sports science world is constantly evolving. Yes, well, a lot of it can't be used in a tactical environment, or it's too hard to bring in. Take the bits that you can and put that into place. Put them into what you're providing your officers, or, the tactical environment. That's how sort of we've approached it.
Absolutely.
So that's always a tough one. Again, not coming from America and knowing how it works here, but I'd sort of go from the point of view is just try to get small wins up and then highlight those small wins and say, look, we've had 10 officers here training with us for 12 weeks. We've volunteered that. We've provided that free of charge. During that time, no one's had any injuries.
It's all right.
No one's had any injuries, or, they're sleeping better. They've improved this. That sort of thing can get by, especially in your smaller units or your smaller commands. Your smaller police stations is probably a way to do it.
Yeah, that's always the biggest thing, especially in an environment like that. I know when I was with the short time I was with the Special Forces. I mean, you put a lot of money into training these officers and training these soldiers and these, that if they're down, I mean, it's not like you can just go grab somebody off the bench. I mean, you're taking a significant hit, especially on some of these special tactics units and things along those lines.
Correct.
But
that's a lot of money being invested in that person that's no longer being able to use.
No question.
We've got an approach, especially in the health and fitness unit here, where large organisations or police organisations always like to go for the quantifiable stuff, like the number on the street, how many cars we've got, all that sort of stuff. We're sort of more focused on the qualitative stuff. We want to make our people better, invest in our people. I mean, we could provide the New South Wales Police Force all with Ferraris and Lamborghinis. Mm-hmm. It's not going to make us better police officers or better drivers. But investing in a driving course for that officer is probably more beneficial in the long run and a lot cheaper. It's about investing time, not money.
Well, that's a great analogy. No, I like that. Well, I want to switch gears a little bit, and I know you can't speak too much about your involvement with rugby, but you're a rugby athlete. You've kind of stayed consistently involved in rugby and coaching and in strength. You're currently working as a rugby strength and conditioning coach. How do you balance the two? How do you balance being a police officer and then being a strength coach for a rugby program? And then, kind of what's some typical, what's a typical training session? I mean, are we starting with, dynamic warm up and then going into our plyometrics? What would a normal session look like?
Well, the way to do it is you have 3 different bags. You have a bag you pick up to go to rugby league training. You have a bag to pick up to come to police training. It's probably the easiest way to explain it. It's ready to go. When you turn up in the car, I'm taking that one today, I'm taking this one now.
Yeah.
Probably the easiest way to do it. And be prepared. Prepare the night before. Pack your bags the night before so you know you're ready to go.
Yeah.
I am fortunate enough that I sort of get to work both of my passions, obviously the tactical and the rugby league world. I think the benefit of that for me is I get to see that the way that we treat our professional athletes and the time that's invested in them, how they get treated, and then look at it from the point of view, well, we never really do that for our tactical guys. So for me there was a bit of a disconnect that at the end of the day, if your family needs help or someone your loved one needs help, well, you're going to call the police. So wouldn't you want them to be trained and have access to the same type of stuff that your professional athletes are going to get? I think that's probably where the term tactical athlete gets thrown away a little bit. If you don't agree with that term tactical athlete, look at it from the point of view, well, what do professional athletes get? Shouldn't we provide that same sort of level of education and expertise and knowledge to what we provide to our first responders, our military, our soldiers, firefighters, everyone? Absolutely. That's the sort of way we approach it from here with regards to that. With normal session, and again in the tactical environment, part of what we do is always we have that opinion that we want to tap into that energy system but not to deplete it, especially with our tactical guys. I mean, we could be down in the gym and the phone rings and they've got to leave. They've got to go. There's no time for them to jump in an ice bath or go and get a massage or make sure they have their protein shake before they leave or, to refuel. Your job's on. Now, we've had a guy not long ago, probably just before Christmas, that made the news. It was a big issue here in the middle of Sydney. Our tactical guys spent 16 hours in full kit.
Wow.
Now, if you know what a full kit is for those guys, the minimum load is 23 kilos. So that's a long time to be carrying a lot of load. Now, again, if we've sort of gone to the level where we've absolutely pumped them and they're laying on the floor in a sprawled mess, blubbering mess, curled up in the corner, and all of a sudden that phone in the gym rings, that we haven't prepared them for what they need to go and do.
Agreed.
Again, it comes down to sort of, watching the volume that we prescribe them. We sort of want to do more of that strength end, but the volume's probably a little bit lower. We do include a lot of mobility and stability type exercises, but the general session would be a dynamic warm-up. We would do some injury prevention in that, such as glute, posterior chain work, scapular and shoulder work. We go into probably our heavy lift, followed by some sort of explosive lift later on, and then we go down towards more of the accessory type work and injury prevention type stuff, where we'll have, through our weekly program, we'll have a ankle, shoulder prehab written in there, as well as a hip prehab all the way through. So that gets rotated in and out. When we run our sessions, it's pretty much organised chaos because we actually run 3 sessions at once. Okay. And there's a reason for that. So we might have, sort of models to a certain extent off Joe Ken's tier system with regards to the upper, lower total body days. But the reason for that is we want to make sure that we get those guys for a limited amount of time. And they work night shifts, they're not here, we can't help them all the time. So we want to make sure that for that week, there's someone in that unit that has done that program that we have set them.
Right.
So if we say, here's your weekly schedule, we get them on a Monday and a Friday, you need to pick up one of these other ones during the middle of the week at whatever time you can get in there, or that's it. All right, then they'll take that program away. They'll pass it on to the next shift. This is what we did. They've got someone in there that can take them through those exercises. Oh no, this is what they're looking for. These are the coaching cues that they've used for this one. So they can sort of be a bit more self-reliant in their programming sort of stuff. Because again, if we're not there, we're not able to help them.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, ultimately, that's it. It's kind of like we always talk about in athletics, where it's you got to go from coach-led to player-led for there to be really
correct. Let's get the buy-in as well.
No question.
And the other thing we're going to look at too is, again, some of our tactical operators are getting on in age. So it's, well, how do we keep them involved? Because sometimes it's that experience that you want. Yeah, we can get the young buck, the star that's fit, can crush everything,
right?
But hasn't been involved in that sort of job or that environment for too long, and it's the older guys that say, no, mate, you need to step back a little bit here, or let's just think this through before we go running through the door or whatever it is. So we need to sort of keep those guys in for as long as we can. So part of that is, thinking about being smarter about how we program for those guys especially. It's retaining the knowledge in there. It's probably like yourself, having senior players that that have experienced before. Well, they're going to be the team leaders. They're the ones that are going to be your leadership group as such. That, hey, we're going to drive this, we're going to do that. And some of the best thing is we run a session for them. The next day they come back and they go, you know what? I actually feel good.
Right.
I've done a workout, but I feel good. That's probably what we're aiming for. We don't want them to be busted up and have DOMs 48 hours later from doing a massive 10 sets of 10 heavy squats. Then they realise they've got to go put 23 kilos of gear on and go and stand out or trek mountains for 8 hours trying to find the bad guy.
Right. Yeah, they're not going to be doing that for very long, for sure. No, I couldn't agree more with you, man. Well, this has been great. I know you got to get going as well, but we always end the show with some resources here. So give us quickly the best piece of coaching advice you ever received.
The best piece is probably one that stuck with me, and I can remember who told it. He might not be the first one that mentioned it, but it was Dr. Rob Newton from ECU, and he sort of mentioned it that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
That's right.
That's probably it works for a lot of things, but we're fortunate enough here that in Sydney we've got a range of different professional sporting athletes and sporting environments that there's a group of us that catch up once a month, and it's for 2 hours someone there will volunteer to provide a 20-minute talk about what they're doing or the latest bit of research that's out, how they're applying it, and then we'll sit down and have a panel discussion either on that or another topic that's been previously mentioned the month before. But in that we'll have representatives from professional soccer, professional rugby league, AFL, cricket, our Institute of Sports. That's sort of part of that. We're going to provide our own networking system, our own information exchange. So that's sort of influenced that, how we've set that up. That's one of them. Right. That's probably the best piece I can remember. Is it Oh,
that's a great one. That's absolutely right too. What about when you're interviewing these officers that are going into the program, you're trying to determine if they're the right fit for you culturally and what you're trying to accomplish. What's an interview question that you ask that kind of gets to the core of the person as to if they're going to be the right person for you or not?
For our officers, they apply through their chain of command and they're selected as deemed by their work ethic or their commander as this person would be good for that. Mm. When we're bringing in someone external, and I think I mentioned at the start that we just hired 2 new full-time staff who started 4 days ago. Oh, yeah. One thing that we and going through the interview process, which I haven't actually had to do for a long time, right. I haven't actually done for a long time, I think one that I tripped a lot of people up was basically, I want you to explain to me your underpinning coaching methodology or your principles in as few words as possible.
It's a great one.
That was probably one of them. And the other one I thought worked well was who would you list as your main influences on your career or your coaching methodology? Because again, if they're mentoring the same people that you follow or that you're aware of, well then you probably realise that we're going to be on the same page here. We're not going to be off in left field. It's probably going to work well.
I really like the philosophy in as few words as possible because it's common, between scientists or strength coaches that you want to have diarrhea of the mouth and you want to sound like you're the smartest guy in the room, but ultimately you got to be able to get an athlete to be able to buy into you and understand it, and then turn around and truly believe in what you're trying to accomplish with them. And so I always talk to our coaches and tell them that they got to be able to explain it to a 10-year-old. You got to be able to explain it to a 10-year-old. And if they get it, then we're going to be all right. But don't try to be the smartest guy in the room.
That's right. And if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it.
That's exactly right.
That's another thing too.
The last question we always go with is just a book, app, and website recommendation.
I'm going to change this up a little bit. There's 2 books coming out that I'm looking forward to. You may know one of the authors, CEO Strength Coach. Ron McKeefery is one that's coming out.
I appreciate that,
another one. coming out soon by David Joyce. Everyone knows how good his last high-performance training for sports
Fantastic
was.
book.
He's bringing out a rehabilitation and reconditioning injured athletes. Sorry. We're going to pinch some of those ideas and implement them with our injured officers.
Wow.
So speaking of him, that should be out before Christmas. Good timing by Joycey, just before Christmas.
No question.
But,
no question.
So they're two that I'm looking forward to. So that's probably a little bit of a change to what you're used to.
No, that's fantastic. Well, I appreciate the plug for the CEO strength coach. But David Joyce is a fantastic person. He's been on the show, and his last book, you were right, was a knockout. And couldn't agree more. What about, is there any apps that you're using, either for your own productivity or ones with your athletes?
Probably the standard one's Evernote.
Okay, yeah, love Evernote.
Yeah, probably the app that I probably honestly use the most is actually podcasting. Again, working sort of two jobs and not having much time to do this sort of stuff. It's easy to punch it into the car and listen to a quick podcast.
Yeah, I agree.
On the way in between jobs or something like that. So there's never any excuse not to be sort of learning. I mean, as you know, in this industry, if you think you know it all, you're in trouble.
Absolutely.
So that's probably the one that's probably underutilised. We do have other stuff here like the GymAware app that we use with our injured officers and our rehab protocols for the guys that we're looking after as part of our reconditioning program. But that's probably the one we use most as the podcast one, or my personal is podcast at this stage.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, it's we talk a little bit on the show, but I mean, those time vampires that drive into work, that drive back from work, or while you're out for a run or whatever, those are opportunities. Because I mean, if you don't, then what you're doing is you're taking time away from your family typically to try to do some reading or whatever, and we're all working 12, 14-hour days, so you got to take advantage of those time vampires. Well, buddy, I appreciate you coming on the show, man. This has been a long time coming, but definitely well worth it, and truly respect what you're doing and how you're doing it, and most importantly, how you're going about providing that information to the world and sharing it. And that's one of the things that there's no secrets in this business, and there's only I think what makes strength coaches great is their heart for giving back to people and their athletes, and I respected the coaches that live that, not just in their their professional life, but in their daily life as well. So, man, I appreciate it, bud.
Mate, no problems. We're always happy to help. I'm happy to give you my work email, that if anyone wants to contact us from agencies, we can provide stuff that we've done. We can give you some of our research. We'll give you our programming. We'll give you whatever you want. We also run an annual conference that's part of our upskilling our physical training instructors in the field. We run an annual conference. It's always open for any law enforcement, fire, military. I mean, you come to our program, we have our special forces guys turn up. Queensland, other state agencies will send their fire departments down. We never charge anybody for that. As long as you pay for that yourself, we'll put you up and
wow.
we'll show you what we do. We'll provide you with the same upskilling that we provide our PTIs. There's no issues with that. We run that once a year, and I think we're up to maybe 8 years consecutively that we've run that. So we're always happy to share, mate. I'll give you all that sort of stuff, not a problem.
Yeah, go ahead and give your email, and then what's the time frame for that clinic?
This one is coming up. It's the last day of November, the first 2 days of December this year.
Awesome.
I'd like to also thank, obviously, the Iron Game Chalk Talk sponsors. So Siren X, Ignition APG, Play USA, and Elite Form. As someone who, like I said to you before and off camera, gets a lot out of these sort of podcasts and uses this as some sort of upskilling for me, it's much appreciated that they sponsor this sort of thing and doing great work, and thanks for that.
I truly appreciate that. It definitely couldn't happen without them, and they're all friends, more so than anything, and giving back to the community in a lot of different ways. So I couldn't echo that as anymore. So I appreciate that.
No problem. Thank you very much.
That's it for this episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk. Thanks to this week's guest as well as our sponsors for bringing this episode to you for free. Make sure to check out ronmckeefery.com, where you can join our mailing list, find the show notes, including all the links and resources mentioned, and information about Coach McKeefery's other products. While you are there, please join Coach McKeefery in the comments section thanking our guest for sharing. If you haven't subscribed to Iron Game Chalk Talk on YouTube or iTunes yet, make sure to do so. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome. Coach McKeefery can be found on Twitter at @RMcKeefery. on Facebook and YouTube at /Ron.McKeefery. That's it for this week. Be sure to check back next week for another great episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk.